Crossing the Hokage. Sword Swinging System. Chapter 1. In the Hokage world, in a forest by the Nanga River, Uchiha Huang wore a forehead protector that symbolized Konoha, and wore long pants and a short shirt. His cold face was covered with sweat. He was nearly 1.7 meters tall and was only 13 years old this year. He was very young, so he was full of vigor. At this moment, he held his breath and looked forward. The moment his left hand grasped the handle of the knife, he pushed the ground with his feet to generate power, and then transferred the power through the waist rotation, and finally transferred the power to the wrist through the shoulder, and finally concentrated on the knife in his hand and burst out. A flash of cold light. Crack! The round log in front of him, which was as thick as a thigh, was cut into 2 pieces. Ding! Perfect number of swings +1. Uchiha Huang smiled, because he finally completed the first task of the system, perfect swings 10,000 times. And the knife he just swung was exactly the 10,000th perfect swing. Sure enough, the next moment, the voice of the system sounded in his mind. Ding! Congratulations host for completing the novice entry task, perfect swings 10,000 times. Sword Swinging System is officially launched. Ding! Congratulations to host for winning the novice mission reward, 300% increase in slashing speed. As the system prompt sounded in his mind, Uchiha Huang's left hand holding the sword suddenly felt a burst of heat. This feeling. Uchiha Huang was slightly moved, and swung the sword in his hand suddenly. Sizzle! The sharp sound of air being cut came into his ears. What a fast sword! Even Uchiha Huang himself was surprised. The slashing speed increased by 3 times. According to the kinetic energy theorem, the speed increased by 3 times, and the kinetic energy increased by 9 times. In other words, the power of the same slash increased by 9 times. A bright smile bloomed on Uchiha Huang's tired face. For 5 years, as a war orphan, Uchiha Huang's life was not easy. Especially since the Nine Tails Rebellion, Uchiha has been completely marginalized, which has had a great impact on his life. In Uchiha Huang's vague memory, his parents in this life were both Jonin, which means they awakened the 3 Tomo Sharingan. However, before Uchiha Huang traveled through time, they both died in the Third Ninja World War. After traveling through time, Uchiha Huang successfully bound to the system. A very strange system, the sword swinging system. As long as you complete the system tasks, you can get corresponding rewards. And the first task is to swing the sword perfectly 10,000 times. The requirement is that you must use your left hand, and when swinging the sword, you must pour all your strength into the sword, achieving a man and sword as one, in order to be recognized by the system as a perfect sword swinging action. This requirement sounds very high, but it is actually not so easy to achieve. Because Uchiha Huang is not a left-handed person, and his left hand is far less dexterous and powerful than his right hand. In addition, he was still very young at that time, let alone swinging the sword with his left hand. Even if he wanted to complete a perfect sword swinging action with his right hand, it would be difficult. This situation lasted until he was 11 years old. With the gradual improvement of his physical fitness and arm strength, and several years of practice, it gradually improved. After another 2 years of hard work and persistence, he finally completed the first sword-swinging task of the system. After completing the system task, Uchiha Huang found that the system's rewards seemed to be mixed with some other private goods, not just the slashing speed increased by 3 times. Huang felt that the knife in his hand seemed to be an extension of his arm, and he could really control it. More than 1,000 days and nights of practice. Only now can I have the sword-swinging technique that is as pure as fire. An ordinary knife, held in Huang's hand, seemed to have a soul. He curled the corners of his mouth slightly, and held the knife in his left hand and passed it to his waist. Click! The knife was inserted steadily into the scabbard at his waist. Then, he reached back with his right hand. Shwa! He pulled out the second knife on his back and chopped it forward. Wow! A flash of cold light, and the thick log in front of him was cut off again. Ding! perfect number of swings plus 1. Sure enough, the effect of increasing the slashing speed by 3 times does not limit the left and right hands. Huang's eyes were surprisingly bright, and he muttered excitedly. Ding! System task released, perfect swing 100,000 times. Reward, spiritual space and space-based skills domain, range 3 meters. Suddenly, the voice of the system sounded in Huang's mind. The second system task is here. What surprised Uchiha Huang was that the reward for this task was spiritual space and space-based skills domain. Isn't this the setting in Luo Xiaohe War? Spiritual space is the place where spirits are stored. The so-called spirit is actually a kind of energy similar to chakra. In the spiritual space, the owner of the space is equivalent to a god, controlling everything, and can even control the spirits of people or fairies entering the space. As for the space-based skill field, to put it bluntly, it is the external spiritual space. This is awesome. Whoever comes to the field must kneel down and sing, conquer. Although the range is only 3 meters, it is enough. In other words, as long as Huang gets this reward, he will be invincible in close combat. Perfectly swinging the sword 100,000 times is not too much. With Uchiha Huang's current swinging speed, it takes less than a second to swing a perfect sword. Of course, the time for a perfect swing cannot be calculated in this way. Because every perfect swing consumes a lot of energy. In his current state, after swinging 10 swords in a row, he must rest for a while, otherwise the subsequent swings will be difficult to be perfect, and it will be a waste of effort. After all, human physical strength and spirit are limited, and it is impossible to swing the sword like a machine all the time. Besides, he didn't have that much time, after all, he had other things to do. In a day, Uchiha Huang could have 4 hours to accumulate sword swinging experience. Considering all factors, at most, he could complete 300 sword swings a day. At this rate, it would take 333 days to complete 100,000 sword swings, almost a year. I've been through 5 years, and it's nothing to persist for another year. Huang looked at the task progress on the system task bar. Sword swinging experience, 10001/100,000 times. He encouraged himself in his heart. The road is long and arduous. After 3 years of life in the ninja school and 2 years as a ninja, Uchiha Huang completed the transformation from a student to a genin, and then to a chunin. It has been a while since the end of the Third Ninja World War, and every village is stepping up its recuperation. Uchiha Huang just passed the chunin exam a few days ago and became a qualified cannon fodder in the Konoha shinobi village. Then, naturally, he joined the Konoha Guard.